know that you have some position papers that are available to the public that kind of outline some of your initial positions on different areas, and we'll cover some of those during the time that we have. But when you get into planning the race, do you have some issues out of this whole laundry list of potential issues, the ones that are going to be the closest to your heart, that you're going to be working the hardest to make people aware of?
I do. What I do, John, is when I'm with folks, after I explain who I am and tell them about my decision to run, I believe I have an obligation to then stand in front of them and share with them my vision for Connecticut and for this nation. And that vision is really based on three issues. I tell them first, I come from the private sector, that job creation is my focus. And I tell them very candidly that the situation we're in today didn't drop down from outer space. The situation we're in today economically was the direct and foreseeable result of career politicians who are worried more about taking millions of dollars of special interest money than they worried about protecting those of us in the state of Connecticut and in this nation. So someone is to blame. And I share with them very clearly, my life experience is not one sitting in political office receiving a paycheck on taxpayer dollars. Instead, it's about creating private sector jobs. And then I share with them something that for Democrats is a bit of a new idea. And I tell them, look, I've been a lifelong Democrat. Right? Nobody's more committed to the Democratic Party than me. But at the end of the day, what we as Democrats have to realize is that before we can redistribute wealth, someone has to create it. And as someone who spent a lifetime creating it and knows the struggle to create it, to actually create private sector jobs, which, with all due respect, my opponent has never had a private sector job, let alone created one, I tell them that that's got to be the focus. That is a huge qualification we have to start to expect from our public officials. And then second, what I talk with them about is clean government. I explain to them that I don't take corporate PAC money, and I don't get $10,000 checks from these massive financial groups. Instead, I fund the campaign with small dollar donations from the people all across Connecticut. And I tell them that I don't believe that we should have all of that special interest money floating around. I think there should be publicly financed elections at a federal level. And I also believe in term limits. If you send people away to Washington for longer than Moses and the Israelites wandered in the desert, you're going to get a very bad outcome. You don't get delivered to the promised land. You get delivered to exactly the financial situation we're in today. We need term limits. The only people who vehemently oppose them are the people who personally benefit by not having them. And so I talk about term limits as well. And then the third piece that I talk about is related to foreign policy, and I explain how that connects into domestic issues. I served as a U.S. peacekeeper overseas in Bosnia for 6 months. I was on the ground in a Muslim nation, and I know from firsthand experience that the most foolish thing we can do is look to a Muslim population as if we're the occupation force. I think the route we are on in Iraq and Afghanistan is wrong. I think that our activities of sending more troops, for example, into Afghanistan is a terrible, terrible mistake. There's nothing in either nation which will ever look like an end state for victory for us. And I'm a big believer in the Paul doctrine. You have to have a clear exit strategy. You have to understand how your use of force connects to the exit strategy. And then you have to be able to effectuate it in a reasonable time frame with a reasonable number of troops. That is not the case in either Iraq or Afghanistan for us. My view is we should be distancing ourselves from these places. We should be withdrawing traditional forces and relying much more strongly on modern warfare. And what that means is special operating forces, intelligence gathering, linguistic skills, civil affairs units. That's how we build up these countries. That's how we protect ourselves. Sending 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 more troops into Afghanistan is a terrible, terrible mistake. My opponent in this race, Senator Dodd, has voted over and over and over again, over years and years and years, to support these wars, to fund these wars, to increase these wars. If he had the first-hand experience in foreign policy that I have, if he had ever been a U.S. peacekeeper in a Muslim nation the way I have been, he would realize what a mistake it is. In the salons of Georgetown, everything seems brilliant. You can sit with a wax pencil and a scotch and do your Winston Churchill impression. You can sit there with a map and draw it up and make up nations and make up peace treaties. But on the ground in the Muslim nation, where I have been as a peacekeeper, you realize this is a fool's errand. that we are sending the best and brightest on. And for me, we need to get out of these places, not get deeper in.